Let's talk about the upcoming Binance burns of Terra Luna Classic. Be sure to stay till the end so you can hear the estimate for what Binance might burn in the upcoming Terra Luna Classic burn. Before we dive too far into the numbers, it's important to understand a couple key things. First of all, the last Binance burn happened on the 1st of December. That was this massive candle burn that we see right here. And Binance has paused their burn since then and plans to continue their burn starting March 1st, which is just under a month from now. Now, Binance decided to pause their burning of Terra Luna Classic because a percentage of their burns were being reminted into the community pool, which you can see right here. Every single time the community pool shot up, that was some kind of burns that were being reminted, sometimes Binance burns, sometimes other burns. And just the other day, LUNC Burn Army, the project manager of the L1 task force, gave us 2 code updates that'll meet the Binance request for them to continue doing their Binance burns starting that March 1st date. And as long as we make sure that these 2 different code changes actually pass governance, we can expect to see Binance continuing their burns very soon. Let's dive into the numbers of what we can expect to see for the Binance burn. But before we do that, if you guys are getting value out of this video, please consider hitting the like button down below. So the first thing that we need to consider when we look at the Binance burns is that 1, the Binance burns are a factor of volume. So that as the 24-hour volume on Binance in particular, but overall the 24-hour volume increases, Binance will burn more Terra Luna Classic. It's also important to understand that Binance will be burning 50% of their trading fees, not 100% like they used to, so the burn amount per dollar volume will be cut in half. So now that we have this information, we can actually put together an estimate. Now, if you go into CoinGecko, this is something that a lot of people don't show you. You click on this historical tab and actually get historical numbers for the volume of different cryptocurrencies. You can actually scroll down to the bottom and export this, which I did already. So now we have all the different volume numbers for the different days on Terra Luna Classic. And again, this is overall not just Binance, but this can be used to give us an estimate. And we can see, well, in the last Binance burn, they did it from 10/30 all the way through 11/29. So we can take this time period and add up what the total volume number is in these different days. So when Binance burned Terra Luna Classic in November, we had a total volume of Terra Luna Classic roughly around $6 billion for that month. Now, those volume numbers did decrease for January and December, which brought us to an average about $3.5 billion, or a reduction of roughly 40% from the last Binance burn. As you can see right above me, in November, Binance burned 6.3 billion Terra Luna Classic. We factor in this reduction of roughly 40%, that would adjust down to roughly 3.7 billion Terra Luna Classic. However, we have to remember that Binance is no longer burning 100% of their trading fee, they're burning only 50% or 1/2. So now we make that adjustment. We could see if we adjust that down again, this would be an equivalent of roughly 1.87 billion Terra Luna Classic. This brings our estimated Terra Luna Classic burn down to roughly 5.6 billion Terra Luna Classic, which is less than they burned in a single month beforehand. This honestly shocked me a lot. I was thinking that this Binance burn was going to be a lot higher, and it still could be a lot higher. We have roughly a month still where we could get really high volume numbers that skews this number up. We could see this double potentially, but based on how we've been seeing things the past 2 months, if we continue those volume numbers, this is roughly what we're going to be looking at. And I know that this is not at all a perfect model. We're not using the Binance volume. We're not using a couple other factors that could be at play here, but this is the best estimate I could come up with the information that we have available to us. However, this estimate for the Binance Terra Luna Classic burn is absolutely pointless if Binance doesn't actually burn. And that's why it's so important for us to make sure that these 2 different updates by LUNC Burn Army actually get through governance so we can meet the Binance requirements for them to continue doing their burn. So if you guys want to learn more about how we can make sure that we can continue with the Binance burns, check out this video up here and I'll catch you all in the next one.